Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show, where today Denny Carter and I will be previewing the NFC West with the help of 49ers analyst Rob Guerrera and Cardinals analyst Johnny Venerable. Yes, Johnny. That's exactly how you say his last names. Denny knows I obsess over pronunciations.
You think about him a lot.
I do. I think about them a lot. I have to ask Rob if I said his last name correctly. He's going to join us right now off the jump. Johnny's going to be here in about 30 minutes or so. But yeah, so Rob, first off, did I say Guerrera right? Please tell me yes.
You're actually 2 for 2, Johnny Venerable and Rob Guerrera. So you're on point for that.
There we go. That's one of the weirdest things about the internet is like you can read a word. I have seen your name in my Twitter feed for 10 or 12 years, but I have never once had to say it out loud. And so I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's how you say that.
Yeah, Pat will think about a person's last name until he absolutely butchers it. So yeah. I'm glad that didn't happen this time.
We're here with Kirk Cousins. And
is it Cousins? Is that how you say it?
Cousins or Cousins? No, but Rob, we're here to talk about the 49ers, where it wouldn't be a 49ers summer if there just wasn't massive confusion at some key offensive position, sometimes more than one. This year, the confusion's a little different because we thought it might be at the starting quarterback spot, but maybe against all odds, at least as outsiders, it does appear Brock Purdy is just the set and forget starter for the 49ers, at least to begin the year. The elbow healed up very well. Brock Purdy framed it, I thought, in an interesting way that I'm not ahead of schedule. Like we just kind of took it as it went, and it went well. Not lip service from the team. Here's Brock Purdy as the starter. But can you just tell us what in the world is going on behind Brock Purdy, between Sam Darnold and Trey Lance? Because it's a fascinating situation. I feel like it might come into play because who knows if Brock Purdy will be able to stay healthy for 17 games. Will Trey Lance still be on this roster in week 1, so on and so forth?
Yeah, welcome to my world for the past 2 years, it feels like. I'll try and make sense of it if I can. Brock Purdy is the starter. They have gotten extremely lucky with everything that has happened since the NFC Championship game with Brock Purdy. The surgery that he had is younger than Venmo. It didn't exist 10 years ago, but it does now. Obviously, only 2 other NFL quarterbacks have ever even had this surgery, but everything has gone perfectly for Brock in terms of rehab. And you're right, he's not all the way back. He's technically finishing up the final stages of it now. He's going to go 2 days on, 2 days off for a few weeks, and then he'll ramp up to full speed. Now, behind him, I don't know what the hell the 49ers are doing. They're giving reps to Sam Darnold for some inexplicable reason. They're giving reps to Brandon Allen, the 4th quarterback on the roster, instead of giving all those reps to Trey Lance. It is a very, very strange situation. John Lynch just spoke today, Monday, and said it's possible they keep 4 quarterbacks, although they're not really sure. So behind Brock Purdy, it's a lot of wait and see right now.
Seems like they took the NFC Championship game where they had 0 quarterbacks very hard. And now, who's to say we might carry 5? I mean, is that illegal? Yeah. I thought this was America.
We're going to carry 14 quarterbacks into every game just so we don't have to start Josh Johnson at any point. Purdy, the surgery he had, like you said, is new. There was a lot of concern about his long-term prospects going forward. Has there been any indication that this has affected his arm strength, which, as I understand it, was not off the charts to begin with, but has it impacted that arm strength?
Everything the 49ers are saying right now is that it has not impacted the arm strength. All the reports we've seen from training camp, from observers, both beat writers and content creators, say that the arm strength looks like it did last year. But like you said, it wasn't exactly super impressive last year. It was, just tall enough to ride the bumper cars, essentially. So that was the big worry, was that any loss of arm strength could really potentially damage Brock's career. But knock on wood, or whatever this desk happens to be made out of, it seems like right now he's okay.
Fiberglass, Rob. Fiberglass. So that's my other question about Purdy is, as an outsider, just as a football fan, a football observer, I was pretty shocked the degree to which the 49ers embraced Purdy. And it seemed like when he was watching those games, down the stretch last year and in the playoffs, this guy is he's running hot. There's a lot of passes that could be picked off, a lot of coin flips that basically went in Brock Purdy's favor. I think maybe some of that was borne out like the Pro Football Focus, like turnover worthy plays data, which some quarterbacks, Geno Smith has famously said is not a real stat, because it might not be a real stat, to be honest. But it just certainly seemed like with the eye test, he was running hot. There was going to be some regression at some point. How are the 49ers so convinced that Brock Purdy wasn't just running hot and that he is worthy of being the starting quarterback for a team that's one of the Super Bowl favorites in 2023?
I don't know, because we've just seen this movie, right? Jimmy Garoppolo at the end of 2017 came in for 5 games, won all 5 games, looked pretty good. They made him the highest paid player of all time. And we all saw how that ended up with Jimmy Garoppolo. They traded heaven and earth to get his replacement. And yet you could argue the 49ers are doing the same thing. Guess how many games Brock started in the regular season last year? 5. Now, he played better than Jimmy Garoppolo did, but you would think that, they would be able to see that, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't jump in with both feet. But I think part of it is there's an emotional component to this, because think of the 49ers season last year, right? Trey Lance gets hurt in the 5th quarter of the year. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in and you're like, all right, they've gone far with Jimmy. They're okay. And then Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt and it's, hey, our season is circling the toilet bowl. This is supposed to be our Super Bowl year here. And then all of a sudden Brock comes in and he stops the water from swirling, right? He rescues this season. We've still got a shot with Brock Purdy. So I think there's an emotional attachment to him that I know fans have. I would like to think the decision makers don't have it, but these guys are humans too. So I think that is part of this.
It seems like Kyle Shanahan falls pretty hard for his quarterbacks when he likes them. One guy he has not fallen hard for is Trey Lance, who, like you said, he traded heaven and earth to acquire and has since really just not liked him all that much. Have there been any improvements this offseason and mini camps and training camps in the way Trey Lance is playing? And are there issues with how he can conduct this offense from an accuracy standpoint, from an arm strength standpoint? I mean, what are the issues here for Trey Lance?
So the issues for Trey Lance are accuracy seems to be the biggest thing. He's been kind of scattershot in his time. He just has 262 career snaps with the 49ers. Snap, not pass attempts. That includes handoffs. That includes everything. That's how little he's gotten to play in 3 years. He still has not finished back-to-back games since 2019. That's how inexperienced he is. Accuracy is the big issue with him. He's gotten a lot of press this offseason because he went to work with Jeff Christensen, the quarterback coach of Patrick Mahomes. He worked out with Patrick Mahomes, and he does seem to have made noticeable improvements to his throwing motion and to his footwork, which Kyle Shanahan has mentioned multiple times. We've heard this story before, though, with other guys, so we need to see if it actually carries over into games. But the accuracy seems to be the big question with Trey Lance. And I don't know why the 49ers seem to have fallen out of love with him. It's very, very frustrating because, to me, they have a Christmas present that they still haven't opened because of how little he's gotten to play.
That's really a great analogy for it. Like, Dad, like, I know it's like a macho thing with you that you don't want to open your presents and you want to go last, but it's been literally 2 years.
But it's time.
It is time. I was so excited to give this to you.
Stop opening the Sam Darnold gift. And look at the Lance.
Please stop opening the Sam Darnold present. Rob, quickly, what is your sense? I mean, it doesn't sound like you think Trey Lance will not be on this roster in week 1. Is he still a 49er after training camp, Trey Lance?
I think if the 49ers got a good enough offer that they would move him, to be honest with you, with the way they've been talking up Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen. Mike Silver recently reported that the best offer they got during the draft or before the draft was a 5th-round pick. I don't think that's going to get it done if you want Trey Lance, but I don't know why in the hell anybody else would give up more than that, considering that they can read the tea leaves too and see where the 49ers are quarterback-wise. So I think that he will be on the roster. The Niners famously held on to Jimmy Garoppolo when they were supposed to move off for him. They value their players a lot more than I think other people value them sometimes. So I think Trey will be there, but I think it's a very, very real possibility he's quarterback 3 to open the year.
That seems very realistic, this, like you said, the way they've been talking about Sam Darnold. Rob, Christian McCaffrey, labeled as injury prone in the fantasy community. We can debate almost literally endlessly if injury prone is a real thing or not. But CMC, he held up last year, but kind of only barely. He played at less than 100% several times. Really was like gutting things out, including in the playoffs. What are their plans, if any, you think, to manage McCaffrey's reps in 2023? And is Elijah Mitchell going to be like kind of like an actual committee member more than just like a breather back guy?
there should be plans to manage Christian McCaffrey because he is the engine that drives this offense. They were scoring 19 points a game before McCaffrey got there. And after he got there, they were scoring around 30 points a game. And that's even with Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback. So it has not been the Brock Purdy catalyst that changed things for San Francisco. It was Christian McCaffrey. But Kyle Shanahan really doesn't rotate running backs unless he has to. If guys get hurt, obviously, he's got no choice. But when guys are healthy, he rides them as much as possible. So while he might need to mitigate CMC's reps, I don't think he's going to. And you can't depend on Elijah Mitchell for anything. That poor guy just cannot stay on the field. He missed 16 of the 20 games the team played last year due to injury. So it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. And for however many games Elijah Mitchell holds up, he'll get his chances, but it's the CMC show.
So, and that raises the question then, Rob, behind CMC and Mitchell, who will it be in your estimation at RB3? Because, man, fantasy managers desperately want to know this. Who is the number 3 guy right now?
Right now, it's Jordan Mason, who was impressive last season when he got in there. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry after contact per attempt. That would have led the league if he had enough carries to qualify. He runs hard, although he's had a little bit of a fumbling problem in camp so far that makes me nervous. And I know the 49ers are talking up Ty Davis.
No, sorry. I was saying, it was a delayed reaction to the fumbling problem. Like,
yes.
Just going to cross him off any list I have.
The Niners have been talking up Ty Davis Price, their 3rd-round pick from a year ago, but he's, he was a forgotten man last year, so he's got a long way to go. So right now, it's definitely Jordan Mason, and if Elijah Mitchell's hurt, which is a very real possibility, Mason could be RB2.
So 2 things. When you said Elijah Mitchell and referenced his health history, I was like, oh my gosh, is Elijah Mitchell hurt? And I just forgot. And he is currently healthy right now. And when Denny asked you who the number 3 was, and you said Jordan Mason, if you had said like Alfred Morris, I just would have kept nodding and going along with it and just believed that they had signed him on like June 20th and like, yeah, he's number 3 now. Okay. And because that's just how crazy and unpredictable it is. Shanny. And we're very traumatized by Shanny's usage.
We are.
Hey, Frank Gore just signed a contract with the 49ers. Now, it happens to be in the front office, but I know a lot of people were like, is he coming back?
We have to pay attention to that. I could see Frank Gore getting a few carries by week 4, week 5, somewhere in there.
He's coming back. So CMC, yeah, well, stay healthy, Christian. Fantasy football is a better game when you are healthy. Real football is a better game when you're healthy. We're talking about the running game. That still includes Deebo Samuel, we guess. What should the expectations be for Deebo's usage, specifically his rushing usage, after the 49ers throttled back a little last year on the ground? I mean, just a strange overall campaign for Deebo. It was only 12 or 13 games. The receiving production fell off a cliff. It did fall off a cliff relative to 2021 amidst like the quarterback chaos. Just tell us what you think the plans are for Deebo as a rusher this year, and is maybe Deebo, the sense around Deebo in general, after like these 2 like kind of like whiplash 2021 and 2022 seasons he had.
So I think the Deebo rushing thing is pretty much over. The only reason they did it as much as they did a few years ago is because they had to. They had so many injuries. They needed somebody to be able to make an explosive play. And so they threw him back there and it worked. But now the league is adjusted. Like they figured it out. And Kyle Shanahan referenced it because they actually ran a Deebo rushing play for Ray McLeod last year. And it went for like a 70-yard touchdown. And Kyle's comment after the game was, yeah, it's nice to do that and not see the entire defense shift as soon as we line up. So they've kind of figured out the Deebo as a running back thing. He'll still get carries here and there, but I think that it's not going to be like it was in 2021. But the good news is that Deebo, he's done his work this offseason. He's lost weight. He's put in the time training. By his own admission, 2022 was awful. He said it was awful in every aspect. He said, I'll never put that kind of bad film on tape again. He's come in shape. He looks good. So I think primarily Deebo is going to be used as a wide receiver. Now we'll see what he can do. In 2021, early in that year, he was fantastic purely as a wide receiver. You think he put up 900 yards in his first 9 games.
I think he was leading the league in receiving through 9 games.
Yes, he has shown that capability, but it all starts with him in the offseason. When he comes in shape, he has a good year. When he comes in out of shape or hurt, he has a bad year. And so far, this looks like a good Deebo year.
Just to give folks an idea of how much things dropped off for Deebo Samuel in the receiving part of the game, his yards per target went from 11.6 in 2021 to 6.6 in 2022. He saw a similar drop in yards per reception. It just all was not very good. As you know, if you drafted Deebo Samuel with the hope that you were going to get a wide receiver one.
Denny's going to ask about the other pass catchers in just one second, but I feel like, at least by me, it has been kind of memory hold with Deebo, like how crazy his offseason was last year. And he was trying to force a trade. And it's easy to lose track of these things with the 49ers, and there's so much quarterback drama. But it was this time last year, I feel like, where all the talk was a Deebo trade. And maybe he was already extended by now, but good to hear he's having a normal offseason.
I did see, I'm going to move on to the other pass catchers on the team, but I did see that Deebo is sending shirtless pictures to Kyle Shanahan on the regular. And you know what? Hey, if that's the way that you have to prove that you're in shape, then you go ahead and do it. I do that with Pat, which is weird, but it's okay. It's okay.
It's not weird. I mean, I asked. That's one way we evaluate your employee performance.
That's right. You got to be in shape to talk fantasy football.
Blurbing, physical grind. I'll just say
it is.
I'll throw that out
it is. No, people don't know. Brandon Aiyuk, pleasant surprise last year in fantasy. I think folks are generally seeing him as the probable wide receiver one in San Francisco. This year, he was 21st in yards per route run among wide receivers last year, right around T. Higgins. Where do you see him falling in this offense as far as priority goes? Because we know it's a run-based offense. It's pretty conservative. Can he make the most out of his opportunities in the Niners offense?
So that's the big question. Nobody has gotten better reviews universally on the 49ers this year in camp than Brandon Aiyuk. Offensive players, defensive players, coaches, reporters. Everybody says he's been virtually unguardable, that he has taken his game to an incredible level, which is the skill that I think everybody thought he had coming out of college. The problem is Kyle Shanahan doesn't ever force the ball to anybody. He can. I've seen him make Pierre Garçon lead the league in yards when he was in Washington. Like, that's a thing that happened. But I think that Kyle thinks, because they have so many playmakers on offense, I don't need to do that. If there's a week where, for whatever reason, it'd be easier to get the ball to Deebo or Kittle or CMC, he's just going to do that, even if Brandon Aiyuk is really good. So I think he'll be better, but I just think that Kyle is not – he's just going to have some weeks where he just goes away from him. And I know from a fantasy perspective, that's the complete opposite of what you want. So even though I think Aiyuk is good and he's clearly their best receiver in the red zone, I don't know that he's going to have a much better year statistically than he did last season.
Right. I mean, it would require hyper efficiency, I think. And speaking of that, just shift over to George Kittle real quick. Kittle has been frustrating for fantasy purposes because
I'm not frustrated at all about depending on him to carry my dynasty team for 3 years in a row.
And it's mostly, Rob, because we don't get points for good blocks, and if we did, then George Kittle would be the first player off the board in 12-team formats. They value him. It seems like the team values Kittle as a huge part of their run blocking game and even pass blocking sometimes. Is there any reason to think that changes and we see more route running, more participation in the passing game this year for Kittle, or is it kind of just a continuation of what we know from Kittle from a fantasy standpoint?
I have been screaming for years that blocking is still the second best thing that George Kittle does. Apparently, Kyle Shanahan is the last person to know that. The good news on Kittle is he had a resurgence last year. George Kittle caught a quarter of his career touchdown passes since Brock Purdy took over last year. His career touchdown passes. They found a real connection in the red zone. And so if Brock is healthy to start the year, and again, it looks like he is, I think that's where you're going to see Kittle perform better than he has in years past, because I think that's a real thing. But in terms of the yardage and the consistency, again, I don't think it's going to be there. And it's frustrating because it can be. We've seen it. George Kittle had 5 touchdowns last year of 30 yards or more. That hadn't been done by a tight end since the 60s. Wow. So it's there, but Kyle, again, he doesn't force it. And I just think that the red zone is going to be where Kittle makes his mark. He's still going to have plenty of those games where he's got 3 catches for 30 yards and a bunch of really good run blocks, and the 49ers win by 20.
Rob, the 49ers, again, final question. We're used to surprises. A lot of times they're bad surprises in fantasy football, which, Kyle Shanahan doesn't care about, and justifiably so. So he should not care about that. But any names that aren't even on the fantasy radar we maybe need to know about? Maybe Juwan Jennings going to take a big step forward this year. Cameron Latu going to be more involved than expected as a rookie? Is Danny Gray going to do something as a sophomore? Danny Gray was a guy I had in Dynasty. I couldn't decide if I should keep him or not for a second year. I did keep him. But just maybe a name that's not really getting much attention in fantasy circles that should be more on our radar.
I hate to be boring, but no. I would say Jordan Mason, if anybody, only because I could see Elijah Mitchell possibly getting traded or cut, frankly. Like, I don't think his roster spot is secure by any means, just because of all the injury problems they've had and because of the depth that the team has at running back. So Jordan Mason is a guy whose role could become RB2. But honestly, like, Juwan Jennings is good, but he's basically just a third down guy. You know, he had 35 catches last year, 23 got a first down, but that's pretty much all he does. Danny Gray had 1 catch last year in his rookie season.
He did, Rob. He did.
Yes. So unfortunately, I hate to be that guy, but like, the names are who they are. When you've got as many guys as the 49ers have in their starting lineup, there's not really room for anybody else. So I think they're the first team to ever have all pros at wide receiver, running back, and tight end at the same time.
That's incredible. Well, Rob, thank you so much for 49ers. Again, complex team, maybe not so complex this year. Maybe the 49ers will just be easy for once, is the last thing I say before I die.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time to join us, Rob. And tell people where they can find you on the Twitter machine. That's what we still call it. Where your work might appear. Where can we find Rob Guerrera on the interwebs?
So I'm on all the socials at Stats on Fire. The podcast is the gold standard 49ers podcast. It's everywhere you get your audio podcast. There's a YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. And also we have a website, goldstandardniners.com.
Awesome stuff. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have an enjoyable season. I know at times Jimmy Garoppolo seemed to be you were kind of questioning your sanity watching Jimmy Garoppolo play last year.
Every time, not sometime, all of the times.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Denny, it'll be easy. 49ers will be easy.
Yeah.
Be
well, I think the thing we have to remember at the Niners is that they want to win 17-3, and we have to accept that. You know, like they don't want to light up the scoreboard. That's okay.
And we have to accept that we will be right back after this. With the NFL season quickly approaching, now is the perfect time to get your Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Get ready for your draft and stay one step ahead of your league during the preseason with updated player rankings, profiles, projections, mock drafts, and much more. Go to NBCSports.com/draft guide and use promo code DRAFT2023. That is NBCSports.com/draft guide, promo code DRAFT2023 to save 20% off at checkout. Denny, we're a few minutes away from Cardinals analyst Johnny Venerable joining us. We're going to talk some AZ Cardinals. Not the most explosive team. There's just not a lot of exciting teams in this division right now. The Seahawks are one of the more exciting teams, but they're kind of an easy team. At least they were an easy team.
Well, they were
until Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker both got injured on Sunday. With Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet both dealing with minor injuries, is this supposed competition over before it even begins? Because Walker's injury seems to be minor. He's not a rookie.
Yeah.
Does this foreclose any chance Zach Charbonnet had of carving out a meaningful early season role?
I mean, yes, to start with, right? I mean, the Charbonnet, for those who don't know yet, somehow you're not hammering the refresh button on Rotoworld. Charbonnet suffered a shoulder injury, is out, I think indefinitely was the word.
It is indefinitely, and they use the word more caution with Ken Walker.
Yeah, so, right. And so, we're still 4 weeks away from the start of the season. I think there's a chance Charbonnet will not be ready for the start of the season. But really, like I did a draft today, folks, and I'm telling you that Zach Charbonnet fell 4 rounds from what his ADP was yesterday. Okay, so I actually think he becomes a fantastic 0 RB target if you have a bench with some spots where you can just hang on to guys who might fall into carries. Walker is going to rise in ADP. I don't know if I can get in on that, but I'm not counting out Charbonnet.
That is the thing about the Seahawks and these injury updates, and Pete Carroll is the master of saying stuff when it comes to injuries.
Yeah.
Sometimes he says stuff that's like overly positive, like you'll witness the quarterback like snap his leg and 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks. And he's just chomping, going, wow, that seems kind of optimistic.
Right. Well,
And
the guy went off in an ambulance.
yeah,
And
then 2 years later, he's finally taking practice reps again. ZC. Oh, yeah, out indefinitely. Who's ZC?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had to figure that out. Yeah. I mean, just to mention the obvious, DJ Dallas is not going to be the lead back.
What about Kenny McIntosh, who was getting a little steam even before the injuries?
There is Kenny McIntosh, one of the most inefficient runners in all of college football last year. But you know what? Hey, that doesn't matter. It's old Petey. Petey loves his hard-working running backs, physically imposing, which Kenny McIntosh is. And so we could see Kenny McIntosh get some real run if Walker and Charbonnet are both banged up entering the season. It all becomes very confusing, but you really have to not cross off Charbonnet off your draft list because his ADP is going to plummet, I think.
You seemed skeptical on Ken Walker there. What's up? Like maybe Ken Walker's a trap.
Because he's gonna jump by a round or a round and a half.
He is hurt. Is he really going to jump just because he's less hurt than Zach Charbonnet?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair question. That's a fair.
Too?
If he does, then yeah, I mean I would be more apt to take him. But I think that the nature of the two injuries to the Seattle running backs, I would think that Walker would rise, but maybe I'm wrong. But if he does, I think that's a situation where you get him and you're like, oh yeah, like we have a path to like elite production. And then the second Charbonnet can play, you're like, come on, it's week 3. I only got 2 weeks out of Walker as the primary back.
It is a tough situation. It's kind of a weird situation in the receiver core where DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett return as one of the very best receiver duos in the entire NFL. Both had very good 2022s as Geno Smith rose from the ashes and had one of the most shocking comeback campaigns in NFL history. But the star of camp so far has been Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who the pads have not gone on yet. I believe the pads are going on today in Seattle. I mean, Geno has been hyping JSN. Pete Carroll absolutely over the moon hyped JSN. I mean, it's not surprising. He is a first-round pick. It's just where the target's going to come from for JSN. Is he really going to render like Tyler Lockett a non-entity? He's been going ahead of Tyler Lockett in underdog drafts, which strikes me as highly aspirational.
I think to a point. Yeah. So basically, you have Metcalf and Lockett combining for about 50% of the team's targets last year, and even a larger percentage of the team's air yards. Okay. I know air yards don't pay the bills, but they are important. And so now you add
air yards leave my family starving, Denny.
That's right. You can't eat them. You can try to eat them, but they don't fill your tummy.
I tried to buy some chicken at the local mart with air yards the other day, and they would not sell.
They said no. They laughed you out of the place.
They did actually, and I'm actually banned. I can't come back.
He tried to pay with air yards.
I live in a town where that's the one market, Denny. So now I hope you're happy. Anyway, sorry.
Right, let's get really serious here. Yeah. Look, JSN is not going to just be like a part-time player. Like he's going to be a problem for somebody. And my thought is that the guy going at wide receiver 15, DK Metcalf, is going to have a tougher time meeting those expectations than the guy going at wide receiver 30, which is Tyler Lockett, roughly wide receiver 30. Okay. I know people go, oh no, it's 32 in my league. So, for me, I think I wrote the Seahawks preview for the site. Folks can check that out. And I kind of spell it out in a little more detailed way. But for me, I think that JSN is going to take from both Lockett and Metcalf. I think that Lockett can still get there from an ADP standpoint. I don't think Metcalf can without like an insane touchdown season, which I mean, he's a big guy. He has 14 abs. He's a very strong man. He could do it. But really, I'm nervous about Metcalf. I'm not as nervous about Lockett.
That strikes me as very sensible. I guess maybe there is a scenario where everyone wins, and maybe JSN just consolidates the non-Metcalf Lockett target share, which was divvied up against pass catchers who were not good players last year, unless you count Noah Fant. They just didn't have a third receiver. Noah Fant didn't have a great year. None of like the Carroll specials at tight end really did anything. I don't know if Will Dissly still on the team. I can't remember. He probably is.
Will Dissly. We love Will Dissly.
We love our Will Dissly. Colby Parkinson. We love him too.
We're remembering some guys.
Yeah, we are remembering some guys, but I think you are correct that DK Metcalf's going to be more effective than Tyler Lockett. We kept Johnny Venerable waiting long enough. We'll wait him. We'll let him wait just one more second. He'll be here right after this. Start your Sunday with an American League Central battle in Cleveland, Ohio. Watch Luis Robert, who I say Robert, but we apparently have to say Robert, and the Chicago White Sox take on Jose Ramirez and the Cleveland Guardians on MLB Sunday leadoff. Catch the action live and exclusively on Peacock at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, August 6th. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Johnny Venerable, the man, the myth, the legend, who I have teased several times. He's now here to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Johnny, how are you doing?
What's up, fellas?
Football show debut.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Big fan.
Thanks for coming on.
Real quick, where can we find you? Where on the because I didn't introduce. I know you have a show.
Yeah,
and you're all over X, as we now call it. Where can the folks find you?
It's a fun platform these days. I'm at Johnny Venerable, and I work for a digital media company out of Phoenix called PHNX Sports. And my co-host and I, Bo Brock, we host a daily Arizona Cardinal podcast, live stream, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. We get to talk about our favorite team, that being the Arizona Cardinals. Just a lot of good stuff happening with this franchise, man.
Johnny, I would be remiss just real quick before we got to football if I didn't ask you, is it actually a dry heat? Because when I see 116 in Phoenix, I'm kind of wondering how dry that heat can really be. How have you been surviving, coping with this heat wave in Phoenix, Arizona?
I grew up in central Illinois for the first 30 years of my life. So yes, I can confirm it's a dry heat. We drove home last summer from Phoenix to Illinois, which I do not recommend. I stepped out of my car in Iowa and my skin felt like it was going to melt off. Like there's no humidity here. So you sit like under an umbrella and be comfortable. So you kind of, it comes with the territory, and then you get like 8+ months of just ideal weather. So you take the good with the bad.
You mentioned Central Illinois. I believe that is on the St. Louis swamp that I live on. And the heat is very undry here in St. Louis. So Johnny knows what I'm talking about. He's going to know what he's talking about with Kyler Murray, who hasn't exactly made it seem like he's going to be ready for week one. And this very classic, like Kyler fashion. I was like, does this guy even want to be ready for week one? Like some of his quotes, like it not grind set quotes, which I appreciate a guy not giving like canned fake grind set quotes, but yeah, wow, he doesn't seem too terribly concerned about whether or not he's ready for week one. I'm sure that he is quite concerned about being ready for week one. But what is the sense around the team about just when Kyler Murray will make his 2023 debut? Is there any chance it's in the opener?
Yeah, it depends on the day you ask, right? Because I think, there were those rap sheet tweets that came out early in the offseason, like going to miss maybe half the year, if not most of the year. And I kind of like put my eyebrows at that. I'm like, wait a minute, like Carson Wentz tore his ACL like almost the exact same time as Kyler and came back week 3. Of course, we've seen RG3 and Joe Burrow come back. And I was never of the mindset like it had to be week 1, but I'm like, well, he's going to play the majority of the season, right? I think a lot of that comes into play. Like people assume the Cardinals are tanking, which if you talk to Jonathan Gannon, they are not tanking. But like, is the roster so self-sabotaged purposely by Monty Ossenford? Like they're just not going to win many games. I think that's a fair question, but the team and the team site through their YouTube page teased a video of Kyler Murray rehabbing. And the last thing purposely that they put in there was he said his goal was to be ready for week 1. And so like, of course, people are going to run with that. Like the team is advertising that. And then we spoke to him. I spoke with him Saturday, and he's not putting a timeline on it. And it was a very coached press conference, clearly, diligently, like don't want to put extra pressure on him. He started camp on PUP. I think it would be a really good sign if he didn't start the season on PUP, obviously. I don't think he's going to be ready week 1, but like, could he come back week 3 or 4? I think that would be promising. There's no soft landing spot for him to come back on. I think maybe the best case scenario, like if you're going to put him on PUP, is like week 5 against Cincinnati at home. But, they open up with the Commanders, and they've got, the Giants at home in week 2. I would be surprised if he didn't at least play 3/4 of the season. Like if we're going to get a good, healthy sample size from Kyler Murray, because listen, guys, if they start like 0-6, 0-7, like I argue with this, other people argue this, like why would you bring him back then? Because clearly you're of the mindset that you're going to get, a certain USC signal caller, which they vehemently deny. They don't want to entertain that, which I get.
Never even heard of him. I've never seen him.
But it's like, what are we like? we're past Halloween and you're, almost winless and you're going to bring Kyler. What are you doing? So I think he comes back early October would be my guess.
You mentioned, Johnny, the other quarterbacks who, have come back early in the season, Joe Burrow in 2021, and then RG3 many years before that. They didn't come back at full health. Like RG3 was a disaster, coming back, and it probably cost him his career being rushed back by Mike Shanahan. Is there any lingering concern about like the timing of the injury? Because I mean, it was late in the season, and I just assumed I assumed, okay, he's done for next year. You're saying maybe week 1. I just wonder if they're afraid of pushing him back too soon.
Yeah, sure. That's the biggest thing. Because Gannon really likes Kyler Murray. Like, took the job in part because, it's an NFL job, but also like he is excited to work with Kyler Murray. And they're playing with house money this year. The owner knows it. It's a new GM who picked Gannon. They've got 6 picks in the top 3 rounds, including Houston's 1 next year. Like, they didn't have a robust free agency spending spree. I mean, like, this is they're resetting the culture here, and they're resetting it with young players. It's great. So why would you rush Kyler Murray back? My only pushback is, it's like, okay, so you knew Kyler Murray wasn't going to be ready week 1. Like why didn't you sign a quarterback? Like I'm sure we're going to get into this, but I watched the quarterbacks Friday and Saturday, and it's not good. They've got Clayton Tune, who's their QB2 right now, who I liked coming out of Houston, but like he's not ready to play. And then Colt McCoy, the incumbent, who is a Keim extension. Like, they have no allegiance to Colt McCoy. I assume they were going to cut him in the offseason. He's doing like color commentary for USFL games in the spring. And I'm like, well, okay, go get Gardner Minshew, go get Jacoby Brissett, right?
Oh, no.
They didn't do that. So then, okay, Colt McCoy, he's been the number 1 during OTAs, minicamp, whatever. It's practice on Friday, and we're standing there, and he's running team, and he's taking dropbacks, and instead of throwing the ball, he's just pointing at guys that hypothetically he could throw to.
No,
and so we asked Jonathan, I'd never seen that before. And then Duke comes in with the 2s, and he's throwing the football. So it's like, I get it. They're doing it every 3-day maintenance with Colt McCoy, but like, how are you going to evaluate Michael Wilson and Trey McBride and these young players? And then Saturday, he does throw the ball, and he's missing guys. He threw 2 interceptions during team. And it sounds like I'm knocking Colt McCoy. He's a great signing for what he was with Cliff Kingsbury. But like, why if you're Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, you have no allegiance. You don't have a connection to him. Like, let's move on. But they're in a tough spot with that unless he shows dramatic improvement. I get he's learning a new offense, but it hasn't been good lately.
What's Carson Palmer doing these days? Someone can give him a call.
You made a lot of interesting points there, Johnny. I kind of forgot Colt McCoy was like a Steve Keim poison pill on the roster, and like they just couldn't get rid of it. And we've been hyping Clayton Tune a little bit in the fantasy community because he had an interesting profile for a 5th rounder. Made it sound like he's not ready. The thing with Colt McCoy does seem like a great guy, and Colt McCoy is one of those quarterbacks now where if he enters a regular season game, it's a matter of when, not if he's going to get hurt in that game.
Correct.
He gets hurt basically every time he steps on the field. And do you think with that in mind, who do they want to be the number 2, Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune?
I don't think they love anybody enough we asked Gannon, is Tune number 2? And he said all the jobs are open. Like, the quarterback room's wide open. I'm like, what does that mean? You have Jeff Driscoll and David Blau. Like, they're not getting significant reps, so clearly they're not in the running. Thank goodness for that. Like, I like Clayton Tune as a future backup to Kyler Murray. He's a big kid. He can move around. He rolled out, hit Michael Wilson on a nice out route on Saturday, and the crowd cheered. But like, he's not ready to play week 1 against the Commanders. I'm sorry. He's not ready to go into Washington and win that game for them. I think he's got a little bit of Drew Stanton in him where he can be a really nice spot starter in the NFL. Maybe I'm shortchanging him ahead of the preseason, but like, again, like, Gannon had ties to Gardner Minshew, was in Philadelphia last year. Drew Petzing, their offensive coordinator, coached Jacoby Brissett and looked viable at times last year. Cleveland won 7 games. I know they were talking to, and probably people roll their eyes at this, like they were talking to Joshua Dobbs. Austin Ford was the assistant GM in Tennessee last year. Dobbs outplayed Malik Willis. He's under 30. He can move a little bit. Like, there's 3 viable options that they could have signed, and they've got $30 million in cap space. They're going to have $80 million next spring. So It's hard because like they do and say a lot of great things where you're like, yes, they have an idea of what they want to do. and they want to evaluate young players, but like you become unwatchable quick in this league. Like Nick Foles late in 2022 with the Colts unwatchable.
Kids listen to this show, man.
When you're trotting out this kind of quarterback product. So I mean, 3 days into camp and they're doing maintenance on Colt McCoy's arm. I don't know. Maybe they signed somebody. Man. Maybe Tune takes the reins during the preseason. I like a lot of what this team's doing. I'm befuddled by this decision.
Man, Johnny, it's July 31st, and it sounds like you've already seen things you can't unsee in Cardinals camp. That's probably a great sign for the season.
Receivers. It was an open practice. Like the fans were there, and they were just going through it.
That's wild.
It is. It's nuts. But hey, they got some nice skill players. I'm excited about the young players.
It's the first time I think I've ever unironically said that's wild. I mean, that is genuinely wild to have the Colt McCoy pointing practice be one of the open practice. Like, people can see this.
You're like, I see one receiver, 2 and 3. Okay, next play.
Johnny, Denny's going to move on to the pass catchers here in just 1 second, but you mentioned Kyler Murray in the PUP list. If he's on the PUP, you have to miss at least 4 games. So if he's not on the PUP, it's a real good sign because, like you said, they expect him to miss fewer than 4 games. Then I know you're just guessing. Percent chance that Kyler Murray opens the year on the PUP list.
Oh man, 50-50 coin flip.
That's
because I was told by somebody 2 weeks ago that they were 50-50. He'd start training camp on the PUP list. Like they didn't know, and like Gannon told us at the combine that like they were going to be extra cautious with it. But then that was, 4 or 5 months ago. And then the Kyler Murray stuff comes out that he's targeting the opener. So I would say, I mean, he's certainly a draftable player. I think he's going to play well at the end of the year. I think there'll be some growing pains, but like I asked him if he was excited about this. He's going to play under center for the first time in like 10, 15 years. Like they're going to put him under center. It's going to be an under center offense. They're going to run a little bit of Cleveland and San Francisco on first and second down. And then third down, it's going to look like Philadelphia, with Jalen Hurts a little bit, but he's going to be under center.
Sounds awful, Johnny. This sounds terrible. I'm like, I just drafted Marquise Brown in a league because he fell in a draft, and I'm like, that feels pretty good. It feels awful now. I'm not drafting any more Cardinals players.
Denny, I don't know if you saw the report. Colt McCoy was pointing Marquise Brown's way basically every play at practice on Friday.
Do I get PPR points for the point?
You do.
A half a point.
All right. Well, geez, I'm reeling now, but I'll ask about the tight ends. So Zach Ertz, 62 years old, coming off an ACL injury.
Come on, man.
I'm just kidding. I mean, he's like 8 years younger than me, so I don't know what I'm saying. Coming off the ACL injury, what are the chances he's ready for the start of the season? And are we going to eventually see a Trey McBride take over at tight end?
Yes, it's already happened. I mean, he's tight end 1 right now. He's been nicked up. I think he missed the last 2 practices, but he had his helmet on. He was running around. Ertz, I think, will be activated before the start of the regular season. I don't know how much he'll play early in like the first quarter of the season. So if you're thinking about drafting him, I would say late. McBride is the guy. That's the guy that they want to showcase. I mentioned Drew Petzing, who had David Njoku last year. Njoku would drop some passes. McBride, to me, I mean, he was poised to break out last year, and you've got Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury making him inexplicably inactive early in the season. It was ridiculous. And so the end of the year, he got a bunch of targets and did pretty well. I think if given the opportunity and he takes full advantage, he'll sleepwalk his way to 500 plus yards and 5 touchdowns. Because again, who else do they have? I think the passing game, with what I saw, especially Friday, with he and Clayton Tune, it's going to be like dump offs. It's going to be check downs, seam routes. He can run just about everything. He was so prolific. I get it. It was at Colorado State, but he was such a prolific, pass catcher at the collegiate level, and was the first tight end drafted 2 years ago. And people forget that. So he'll get opportunities. He wasn't a draft pick of this regime, and they are favoriting their draft picks. Make no mistake. Like the guys they took in April are going to play for this team. But Trey, I think, is one of those guys that's going to seep through and ingratiate himself to Gannon. And I think he has a nice year.
That was like a real deal. People forget, by the way, Johnny. Like people really do forget Trey McBride was the top tight end in the 2022 draft. So that's like no joke. And it is. You mentioned they're going to favor their guys. They didn't get to bring in as many guys as they would probably like. It was a strange offseason for the Cardinals, kind of a holding pattern. Didn't have a ton of draft capital, if I'm remembering correctly. But one of those guys was third-round receiver Michael Wilson. How has he been popping in the early days of Cardinals camp, the offseason program? How do the coaches see about him? Because we'll ask more about the receiver corps, but it's an up for grabs receiver corps behind Marquise Brown. There's Rondale Moore, a fantasy legend who Denny is going to be contractually obligated to ask you about. And there's Greg Dortch. And how's Michael Wilson, the third rounder, look?
He's running with the ones right now, if that tells you anything. I was pretty surprised they took him because they took a corner, Garrett Williams, who was hurt, and then they took Michael Wilson right after that. But he was healthy during the offseason. He dominated the Senior Bowl. He's unlike anything they have because Steve Keim had an infatuation with undersized receivers, pairing them with Kyler Murray, which
did he ever?
Kind of conversation in and of itself. Michael Wilson is supremely gifted. Can he stay healthy? I think if he stays healthy, he's going to become the number 2 receiver for this team by the end of the year. Because again, they're going to run the ball early. So that means he needs to be out there run blocking because I love Greg Dortch and Rondale Moore. Like, you're not getting that from them. And you're probably not getting that from Hollywood Brown. They signed Zach Pascal from, I think he came from Philadelphia, spent time in Indy. Like, he's going to play a lot. Drew Petzing's offense in Cleveland last year, guess how many receivers under 6 foot they had? 0. And it's like, they're kind of, I don't want to say they're weeding these guys out because Greg Dortch deserved to play last year. Keim's infatuation, Cliff's infatuation with Rondale Moore inexplicably took snaps away from Greg Dortch, I watched it all preseason training camp. Like, he outplayed Rondale Moore. He was a better player. He had better separation. He put 100 yards against the Niners on Monday Night Football. Like, he deserves to play, and he'll make his money special teams and returning punts. But Michael Wilson is, if he can stay healthy, is going to be a player that they try to build around. And if they have an opportunity to pair him with like a Marvin Harrison Jr. next spring, I think that's what they want to do.
Johnny, I just want you to know that I was dragged over the coals on this show by my co-host for liking me some Greg Dortch last year.
Oh, he's great.
And,
well, we just told you we wanted you to talk about literally a second player.
I said no.
The show, and you only talked about Greg Dortch.
I said I will shut my mouth if it's not about Greg Dortch.
It was a very odd year of the Rotoworld Football Show where Denny only talked about Greg Dortch.
This team had DeAndre Hopkins 2 months ago and cut him gave him $21 million to leave. I mean, that's right. They tried all offseason to trade him. They had started trade conversations in February. Nobody wanted that contract, and they would not have him on their books past this year.
So you're saying Rondale Moore has an uphill climb to see consistent snaps in this offense?
Yeah, Johnny, because Rondale Moore, he's going very clearly as the second Cardinals receiver in fantasy drafts. Like, huge gulf between him and Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch in ADP.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably not wise. I would say that it's Hollywood Brown, and then it's up for grabs with an emphasis on the bigger receivers because they're going to play more. I do like. I tweeted this out on Saturday. Like, his route tree is much better. How could it not be? I mean, his yards per catch year one under Cliff Kingsbury was like 8 yards, and it was kind of a gimmick offense, joke offense with him. Passes behind the line of scrimmage. You're asking somebody. I'm 5'6.5". I interviewed him at media day. We're the same size, same height at least. And so it's like the idea to use Rondale Moore at the line of scrimmage is not a good idea. So I mean, he's a slot receiver, and he's underneath. And he's making people miss like 5 to 7 yards downfield. That's where he's going to be living. But again, a lot of that is going to be predicated on his ability for Yak and then to stay healthy. He's not been able to stay. He hasn't been healthy since 2018 at Purdue.
No.
And so it's like, we all remember that one game against Ohio State. That was like 6 years ago. So I think he's going to be on the team and he'll get his opportunities. But like, he's had 400 plus yards each of the first 2 years. Like, I think that's where he's going to be living. And I think he could be living on a different team next year. Just because, Dortch, they tendered. Like, Austin Ford tendered Dortch's contract to come back this year. They watched enough last year, like, you're going to be around. But, I mean, this offense is already going to be so limited without Kyler Murray. Like, Hollywood Brown, Trey McBride, James Conner feel like good bets. And then take a flyer on Michael Wilson is what I would recommend.
Well, you just basically said triggered much to a lot of the fantasy community with Rondale Moore. But the way you laid it out, I mean, honestly sounds ironclad. Like, it does. Extremely persuasive case. And
I want him to be good. He's a great guy, but like, even when we talk to him, like, we asked him, like, what's it going to take to get healthy this offseason? You change your body. And it almost sounded like he was a little defeated. It's like, it is what it is. I train hard. He's in great shape every offseason. It was like the Thursday practice before week 1. He messed up his hamstring last year. He just never recovered. And they they really would do themselves a disservice because they would make him a big focal point of the offense, even with, D-Hop and Hollywood last year. It was like, we're going to give Rondale Moore X amount of looks. And then at the end of the week, he just is not available. That would kind of, screw up what they obviously want to do on Sundays.
And just, you mentioned Cliff Kingsbury and the joke offense part, but it just was very, very jokey. Cliff was a jokester.
Well, I read that the Cardinals players are trying to get used to rules like, any rules really, but rules like dressing properly in the team facility. They're being fined if they're not wearing the right thing now. This is a whole new system they have going.
I don't know how much time we have, but I mean, there was a clip from Hard Knocks last year. Lekkie Fotu, who's a defensive tackle, just brought like waffle mix into a team meeting for defensive tackles and making waffles late November, and just started making food. And I think like there was an ideology. Now they charged players for food last year too, so that might have been a part of it. But
that was rather infamous, charging the players for food.
Yeah, so there's an ideology which I think they've nixed, by the way. Monty Ossenford is in charge of things now. He's taking care of some of the things you would hope he would. But this year, I think like Zaven Collins tried to bring food into a team meeting, and Gannon's like, we're not doing that. So yeah, they're fining players for being late. You got to wear Cardinal gear. I mean, like last year's team. I mean, they were projected to win 10 games last year, and it was just literally like, can we just athlete people? Can Kyler Murray play backyard football? It was rough, and they leaned on JJ Watt as much as they could for public appearances, but he's gone now.
Yeah, Jonathan Gannon, Zaven Collins, you can't bring in your entire smoker and smoke a brisket for 8 hours in this team meeting. That might have flown under Cliff, but not under me. We have a few minutes left, Johnny. The last question, at least set question we have for you. The backfield, James Conner is far and away the number one running back. Who is the number two running back, and does it matter? I mean, it does matter because James Conner has a tendency to get nicked up. Very tough runner.
Yeah.
But it leads to a lot of nicks and bruises. Who is the number two running back? I mean, Corey Clement's on the roster. Keontae Ingram is maybe the favorite. Ex-Raven Tyson Williams, not a very impressive room on paper.
No, and we asked him, are you happy with this group? You want to add somebody? Running backs are really cheap, apparently now. And Kareem Hunt was under Drew Petzing last year in Cleveland. Not interested. James Conner is going to get the bulk of the workload. And then, Keontae Ingram, who's a sixth rounder, who's talented. He went to USC and transferred from Texas. He's the backup. And he's big like James. He's not as... I would say nifty once upon a time in the open field was when James was scoring 20 touchdowns here, and he's not as good as a receiver. But okay, well, if hypothetically James goes down, which he's been known to do, what's it going to look like? I think it's Keontae on first and second down in between the tackles, and then Corey Clement probably is the third down pass protector out of the backfield. I'm shocked they didn't draft one. They use 3 pre-draft top 30 visits on running backs, just like a Tank Bigsby of the world, just didn't fall their way. I expect them, they'll be a team prime to take it back next year. They've got guys on their contract, on their roster, like Ertz and Connor. They won't be around next year, but they're going to pay him 8 figures this year to be kind of the bridge glue guys. And James has been a really good player in person for this franchise. So he's going to get 60. I would say he's on pace for probably 25 touches a game.
Really? Yeah.
It sounds realistic. It does.
Yeah. I was going to ask if he's going to be the centerpiece of the offense. It sounds like that might be the case. You mentioned Clayton Tune. If he gets some starts, it'll be rough, but maybe it'll lead to a bunch of short targets, dump offs. You mentioned McBride. So James Conner averaged about 4.5 targets per game last year in 13 games, 59 in total. Could we see even more of that if that kind of offense takes hold?
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the offense with Colt still too, is dinks and dunks and short yardage. Unfortunately,
I think that's literally all they can do with Colt.
Right.
He's pointing. He's pointing at, and he's just hit by 4 defensive linemen at once as he's pointing.
But I'm going to tell you right now, the short throws were the ones he was missing that were leading in interceptions on Saturday during team drills. It was not deep outs where it's miscommunication with a Michael Wilson. It was the pass for Rondale is behind him 5 yards down the field. But no, I think if James were to hypothetically stay healthy this year, he's going to 1,200 total yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns. here's what I will say. I've dogged on them for the large majority of this call. Like their tackles are good. And I think their offensive line is going to be a plus offensive line that gets better. Paris Johnson Jr. could be really good. And thank goodness that they took him and they stopped taking tweener linebacker, undersized receivers.
What was
Like they have grown up. He does, man. He infatuates himself with those kind of players. I think they took like 6 off-ball linebackers in the top 2 to 3 rounds during his tenure.
Steve Keim, it's like just draft someone with a position.
Yeah.
You ever thought of that?
They did not think of that, but they have basically, outside of like your Buddhas and Kylers, like they've punted on the draft for 15 years. Like they're done doing that.
Oh my gosh, Jesus!
A grim way to
Hunting on the draft.
Johnny, you had a lot of really, really interesting stuff to say about one of the teams that will be one of the least interesting in the NFL this year. It'd be more interesting if Kyler can get out there early and just see how he performs in a more professional system. Just kind of left hung out to dry too often under Cliff Kingsbury and kind of allowed to like play into his worst tendencies as a player too often under Cliff Kingsbury. So that will be a fascinating storyline for the 2023 season once Kyler Murray kind of gets in there under what hopefully is a more professional operation. So yeah, really, really good stuff, Johnny. You can have a final word. Remind people again where they can find you. And thanks.
Yeah. Johnny Venerable on Twitter, gophnx.com. It's the PHNX_Cardinals on Twitter podcast every single day, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, it's interesting. I will say, like, Kyler Murray's motivated to come back in part. I'm sure he hears the Caleb Williams stuff like that. How can you not?
Oh, wow.
How could you not? Johnny, real quick before I let you go, you said you're from Central Illinois. I'm assuming you're too young. There's no chance your Cardinals fandom started with the the St. Louis football Cardinals.
Of course it did. Yeah.
Oh,
I grew up a St. Louis. I am a St. Louis Cardinal fan. My dad was a St. Louis Cardinal football fan as well. So I'm 35, so it's embedded into me deep.
There you go. Yeah.
Get rid of John Mozeliak like we did.
I know. It's time. It's time for him to be kind. He had a little more success than Keim.
He did, yeah.
Time for him to be kind. Time for you to be kind. We've taken enough of your time. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep. Thanks, man.
Denny, we supposedly have to talk about the another former St. Louis team. They keep taking our teams. Taking all our teams. The St. Louis Rams. Zoomers are like, what the hell is this? St. Louis Rams? That's not a real thing. And I tried to talk Marshall Faulk, Orlando Pace, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. You never heard of these guys? Like, no.
Yeah, right. Come on, please. Their grandfathers watched them.
Yeah, I was thinking that this is 57th minute of a podcast type comment.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking in my head of like joke accounts that would be big on Threads. Like Threads is like all like influencers and stuff. And I thought of a 15-year-old football Nepo son. So like the son of like, say, I don't know, like Ray Lewis or something, has a really popular account on Threads, even though it's revealed one day that he doesn't remember the Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl. Come on, man.
He doesn't.
He's too young to even remember the 28-3. This is way. This thought should have never left my head.
Hey, you know what? I like where you're going with it. If we had another 15 minutes, we could probably get to like the core of that joke.
We could, like the Gordman's brand account is really popular on Threads. Most of the country probably doesn't know what Gordman's is.
Hey, do they make fish sticks? Is that what
yeah, probably. But,
fish sticks, yeah.
Threads. Anyway, the Rams are the Threads of this division. They're trying. That's a horrible. They're not the Threads of this division.
They're not good.
Does anyone behind Cooper Kupp matter in the Rams skill core, Denny?
I mean, apparently, according to reports from today, Demarcus Robinson matters. I'm so tired, Pat.
I'm deleting that.
I'm tired.
I know I am tired. It's July 31st, and so all right, week 1, where are you at?
I'm sorry. I'm not going to get excited about Demarcus Robinson. I'm not. I refuse. Okay. We've talked about Puka Nacua. I have talked about him.
But we, you mean you.
Endlessly. Yes. There's Tutu Atwell, who's also a receiver on the Rams. I mean, I don't know, man. All the the guys behind Cooper Kupp just tell me that Cooper Kupp's going to see 200 targets this year.
It's true. The guys behind Cooper Kupp just sold me a reverse mortgage.
He just sold me a what do they call it? The NFT monkeys. What do they call it? Apes?
The apes, the bored apes.
Sold me a bored ape. Yeah. So and therefore, like when it comes down to like taking Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp, the volume that Kupp's going to see in this offense kind of makes me lean that way. And this is after taking Tyreek Hill for much of the offseason. So I would guess Puka Nacua will have a chance to emerge as a number 2. But I guess if the team likes DeMarcus Robinson, that's all that matters.
Yeah, if they like DeMarcus Robinson, that means they don't like anyone other than Cooper Kupp. Right. That's a big Cam Akers season question mark. Is we doing this again?
Sure. We're doing this again. I think we as a fantasy community are not doing well with running backs coming off of major injuries. We're doing very poorly. Okay. We need to look more strongly into how these guys recover because man, we are constantly wrong. And we were wrong. We were completely wrong about Cam Akers. Everybody who's going in on Javonte Williams because he's at practice right now is going to be catastrophically wrong. I know this. Okay. Stop yourself. I'm the Jordan meme. Stop. Get some help. Draft Samaje Perine. But now, hey, we're 2 years removed from the Akers injury. So now he's probably okay. And now I'm willing to draft him.
He went from trying to force his way off the team to basically being the every down back down the stretch. And Sean McVay basically being like, we're cool now. Like they have had a reconciliation, the Rams, and
he was good too. The metrics, the analytics say that he performed really well. It wasn't just that they were stuffing the ball in his chest 23 times a game. It was that he was doing a lot with that opportunity.
Cam Akers is currently the RB21. That could sound high. That could sound low. Would you rather have Cam Akers or Miles Sanders? He's going one spot behind Miles Sanders in running back 80.
It's kind of the same archetype. I like Akers to get more involved in the passing game, so I'd go Akers.
I like Akers' touch floor more. Miles Sanders, I've been conditioned to not believe in.
Yeah, well, you do not like some of Miles Sanders.
I do not. Cam Akers or Alex Madison?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm still going Akers. I actually think that Matt. First of all, Madison's not good. It doesn't matter that he's not good because it doesn't matter if running back is good or bad. It just matters if the coaches want to give them the ball. That's it. Okay. So they're going to try to do that. But I'm telling you that Kevin O'Connell is going to give up and the Vikings are going to lead the whole damn league in pass attempts this year. So
it sounds very realistic, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be good for them as a team. Okay. They're going to win 6 games, but I'm out on Madison. I'd go Akers there.
They're going to run that Kirk Cousins ship aground and then intentionally scuttle it, but just be passing the entire time. And I may or may not be reading a book about the Spanish conquistadors who scuttled a lot of
You can always tell what book Pat is reading.
No, it's true. You really can.
When you were reading that Oppenheimer book, everything was a nuclear disaster. You remember that?
Do you remember that I read the book? Many people are forgetting that I read the book before Chris Nolan read it.
I mean, you were an Oppenheimer hipster. You knew about it before anybody did.
I did. I read the book before even Chris Nolan did. And
you knew about him way before the Zoomers. I
did. Chris Nolan's now this company's most important employee. Oppenheimer is an NBC Universal film. Did you know this, Denny?
I did, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. And Chris Nolan has never made a bad movie, is my opinion.
Yeah, he has, but not for NBC. He hasn't.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's true.
He actually probably hasn't. He's still haven't seen Tenet. Not really sure. There's I think I'd be confused.
I'm not seeing Tenet. I'm not seeing it. No one's got time for that. Come on.
No, but see Oppenheimer. In fact, you got to see Oppenheimer. They'll give Denny and I raises if you see Oppenheimer. So you see it. They'll give us raises too if we end this show. It's over.
Yeah, probably time.
It's over. So thank you so much to Rob Guerrera, to Johnny Venerable, here to talk to us about an interesting, strange division. We'll be back Thursday. I don't want to speak too soon. I believe with Patrick Corain to do maybe a best ball draft. And then we're back next Monday to preview the AFC East. We're going to try to preview the NFC East next week as well, but we're off to Canton, Ohio for the Fantasy Football Expo.
Let's do it.
So for Denny Carter, for Rob Guerrera, for Johnny Venerable, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you for listening. We will be back later this week.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.